we will get started on time because we don't have a ton of time, and we have an amazing topic here with Arno. So I'm Miranda. Hello. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm with the Coffee MBA, and my business partner, Heather, and I invited Arno to come here, and we are going to be doing these webinar series. So please look out for these in the future. We also have a survey at the end because we really want to understand what people are interested in hearing. And do you want a part 2 with Arno? We'll find out. So without further ado, I don't want to take too much time away. Please, please everyone, welcome Arno.
Hi, everybody. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome today to the webinar that we've chosen the title of Value-Driven Operations for Coffee Roasters. It's pretty much what we're going to be talking about today. Interesting. Oh, look, little animations, cool. What we're going to be covering today are 3 basic topics. And the overarching topic here is that, everybody who's a coffee roaster in the world, you're running a true operation, right? Like operations are, I like to joke, they're companies' liaisons to the real world. We're the people who move actual tangible objects that exist in space and time, right? Not ones and zeros. We're not financial tracking. This isn't really, although strategy is heavily involved at some point in time, you're actually moving things. So what we wanted to cover today was how that connects, or what we're trying to talk about today is how that connects to your businesses and your product's value proposition, and how you can use product thinking and bring it all the way back into your operation and align it with lean manufacturing thinking. Okay, so it's set up into 3 little subheadings today. We have specialty coffee's value propositions, plural, and sort of exploring a little bit of what that could mean for a specialty coffee product. And then we look at a roaster's operations. And then we look at how you can invest in things that are truly valuable to your customers, and how you can look to remove some of the waste that may be hidden within your operation. We're going to do this today using a couple of examples. Okay, this is the slide about me. I'm Midwestern, so this is the most challenging slide. I was definitely taught not to talk about myself very much. Although those people who know me know I otherwise love to talk. My name is Arno Holschuh. I think in coffee, we always do this thing where like, I'm a 20-year veteran of the coffee industry, but that's about right. It's something like that. I got my start in 2004 as one of the early employees of Blue Bottle. And that organization would believe very heavily in promotion from within for a really long time. And so for 10 years, I climbed the ladder through Blue Bottle. It was a really great experience for me, and learned how to do green buying and roasting, and repaired a lot of espresso machines, made a lot of lattes, and eventually transitioned over to management of their production facilities, and then management of their product as well. And weirdly, management of their pastry program for my last year, which I knew nothing about. After Blue Bottle, I joined Bellwether Coffee, which is a company that manufactures a ventless electric coffee roaster, and also sells green coffee to people who own the Bellwether coffee roaster. Notably, the green coffee is all priced, trying to use the living income price for the producer as the price signal. So in my career, I've been a lot of different things. I'm kind of like one of those people who arrived through an unusual path. I don't have an MBA or anything, but I've run a lot of production facilities, and I've founded some pretty interesting operations as well, including manufacturing of hardware at Bellwether. And I see myself as an operator, somebody who thinks a lot about strategy, leader of teams, and I'm pretty goofy. Right now I'm working as a consultant. So much to me. Oh, nope, wrong way. Okay. First question, what is specialty coffee's value propositions, or what are specialty coffee's value propositions? So let's take a little trip to the past, to my early days. I was just referencing when I started in specialty coffee in 2004, around about there. And of course, there are people who started much earlier than that. It was really simple in a sense. It was really complicated to do the things that we did because the paths weren't so well trod, right? There's a lot of exploration trying to figure things out. But the basic idea is that we were just going to make good coffee, right? And that was enough. And so, we thought about When we thought about good coffee, we thought about, well, let's buy really good green coffee, right? And this was a time when we would have gladly spent $1 more per pound for something that we thought was a little bit nicer, right? We weren't really thinking about it maybe in the way that we would today. And good also was sort of broadly good. It was like more acid was good, sugars were good. We were really into funky, weird, fruity flavors at Blue Bottle for a long time. We just everything was good. And then you would like get a good warehouse. And that seemed to be like a big part of our identity that we had this big warehouse in Oakland. And I know a lot of other coffee companies have done that too. You have this big space, Bowen Trust warehouse. You would hire some good people generally, even though they had no actual specific technical skills yet, because that wasn't so widespread in the industry. You'd hire somebody, just any liberal arts major off the street, and make them your lead roaster and get them on the Probat. By the way, it had to be a Probat UG22 if you were worth your salt. And then freshness is really, really good too. So just make sure that it's super fresh, right? And I don't think that we really paused to consider which of these things that we were doing were really contributing to the obvious resonance the product was having with customers, right? It just seemed like on all fronts, more effort was the way to go, right? But that has totally changed. Those days are like long gone. And part of the problem is that we are a victim of our own success, right? Coffee that tastes good, in the sense that it has good intrinsic flavor qualities, is everywhere. It's crawled into every nook and cranny, I think, of our society in some sense. And you can get reasonably good coffee in a can at a 7-Eleven these days, and you can definitely go to a third wave or third wave seeming cafe, often cafe roaster, in almost every little town that has economic vitality. It's not everywhere. I mean, notably, I think we're a very homogenous industry in the people who get to enjoy the fruits of labor here, like the people who get to careers, and also who we market to. I think it's been a recognition, but it's also true that like if you're just trying to get out there and you're going to say, I'm going to have a coffee company where the coffee is good, and by the way, I roasted a new Probat UG22, that's no longer distinctive, right? And so you have to be a little bit more intentional. This is also like really liberating, I find, because as Miranda so often points out, it means that your coffee company can be an extension of you and your beliefs and your tastes when you find your customers, right? But it does require more thought now, right? And so you have to be intentional about what your coffee is. So I put up here two fake coffee companies um, uh, that don't really exist, but I will admit that I was thinking about some friends of mine when I did these. But so on the left, you have the Depulper Coffee Commune. Okay. And I would say that this is a coffee company. Probably everybody here knows a coffee company like this. This is a coffee company that is foregrounding farmers and social equity. And specifically, they're trying to do the right thing by the farmers and put forth a lot of effort into paying farmers more money. Okay. And I would freely admit, we thought about this constantly at Bellwether. I'm sure that they continue to think about it constantly at Bellwether, right? What's the most effective way to do this? And so in this company, the most important things on the product are that it was traded fairly, right? And in order to have those more robust payment mechanisms, often it works a lot better for both sides if you enter into a long-term partnership, right? So you're going to be trying to do the right thing with the same partners every year, right? Now, this company has found that it has people who are really into that product, but they're all geographically spread throughout the US. They're not all in one pocket, right? And so they have decided to go completely online. They don't have any retail shops. Okay. Everything in their branding is very farmer focused, right? But I wouldn't somehow mistake these people for like, Luddites or whatever. They're very design forward actually, because their clientele they've found um, tends to be people who like more avant-garde or interesting design, right? So you've got sort of that product in your mind probably arrives to you every month, right? In a handsome custom mailer, and you open it up and it's a beautiful bag, likely compostable, and inside is some coffee that you can feel really good about drinking. It's always totally solid. On the other side, we have Stratocaster coffee, right? Now, Stratocaster coffee comes out of the original like aesthetic tradition that I did in the early 2000s, where blends were really cool, and roasting, of course, never to second crack, but like comfortably in the middle between first and second. That was like the sweet spot, right? And Stratocasters run kind of like by that kind of a crew, you know. They like that medium dark roast profile, but they're really, they're like idiosyncratic in that they really kind of only want to do this to super nice naturally processed coffees, right? Because they just find that that is something that they love and that resonates with their customers. And their branding is all kind of like rock and roll cool dad, and you know, and they try to like be like the genuine thing. That's part of their thing, and part of being genuine is that they deliver it fresh daily. They have their own fleet of vans, and that delivers it to grocery store shelves and to wholesale accounts daily. So fresh is a big deal for them. Okay, these are both great coffees, but they have really uh, different operations, or they can and should have very different operations. Okay. So before we see what that means, let's talk a little bit about what is operations to a roaster, to a coffee roaster. Those of us on the call who have seen it or do it know that it is really not roasting. You know, they call it the roastery because calling it the um, cardboard baggery or sort of cardboard boxery would be like way less cool or whatever, right? But a lot of what happens there, you know, in terms of labor hours, maybe blending, destoning, blending, packaging, picking of orders, right? That may actually be a lot more of what you do than roasting, right? So if you break it down, this list is not comprehensive, by the way. So people who are operators out there, you can totally find other ones, right? But the basic ones that I think of are maintaining a facility, right, in which you're going to be operating all this equipment. This includes material handling and storage. It's a really big deal, right? Like how much pallet racking do you have? The forklift here. You need to procure your raw material on roasted green coffee. That's a really big purchase for you, right? It's very important. And even though one can make the argument that that may not be like in some organizations that may not be operations, it's a little bit like product, choosing what you're going to roast. Within the coffee industry, I find that it's almost always handled by whoever's handling the roasting. Like that all rolls up to one management figure, director of coffee or similar. Processing that coffee by roasting it, um, you know, roasting it, destoning it, blending it, putting it into a bag or other package, sometimes grinding it if you're into that. Nitrogen flushing is out there, of course, sealing it all, right? Like all of that is the heart of your labor there. And then you need to manage how to get the coffee to your customer, right? You may, in fact, also spend a lot of time thinking about how the coffee gets to you and how the trucks arrive at your door. But definitely, you're going to be thinking about your delivery fleet, your UPS bill, or your squadron of bicycle messengers, or however you've chosen to do this, drones, perhaps. It's something you have to do. Okay. So each of these buckets of operations offers you an opportunity to really invest in what you've decided to do as a company. Okay. So let's take a look at how you might approach each of these differently. And I would say each of these here, by the way, is a totally valid approach. Each of the three in this little four square thing that I've done. It depends upon context if this is the appropriate thing to do, right? So you think about your facility, just think about the building itself for a moment, right? And for many, many coffee companies, either by choice or through inertia, their building itself is a big part of their brand, right? It's this big brick warehouse, right? Someplace where warehouses, you know, it used to be an all warehouse district, but now it's kind of less like that. You know, we can all sort of think about like on the West Coast, there's like the Arts District in Los Angeles is the classic idea of a place where this has occurred, right? And it connotes authenticity, I find, something that people are very big on. So it may be a really important part of your brand as well as a place you do business, or it may just be something that you decide is a total waste, and you're going to look to roast at a co-roasting facility, or you take it one step further and have somebody else roast your product for you. You know, a very defensible choice in some cases. Um, or the facility may be this thing where you've decided that you're going to explore the joys of vertically integrating everything, and you're going to get a really cheap warehouse. You're going to do this all very rationally, and you're try and get as much value out of that investment as you can, right? This is like for a long time, everybody wanted to see how little they can do, and I think that with the advent and the success of some of the newer manufacturing companies, and like Tesla, for instance, like they just want to do it all. Actually, they want to mine the stuff for their batteries in some cases, right? And so it has become interesting to people again to actually do things instead of trying to find somebody else to do it for them, right? And I think it can be a really great path for some companies. And procurement, there's a trope I think that I probably agree with, that most of the coffee quality, the intrinsic coffee quality, is generated on the farm, not through roasting or anything like that. Farm processing, you may say. So procurement can be why your product tastes like it does. And if your product's most important value is its intrinsic flavor qualities, this is like it. This is the most important thing, right? Equally so, it might be, if you think back about the Depulper Coffee Collective, this may be where your social mission lives. If your company is out there and has a really strong social brand, then within a coffee roasting facility, obviously how much people are paid in the roastery and in the cafe is a topic of great discussion, right? And there's a great living income movement there. Big fan of that myself, right? But how farmers are paid is something that one must address if one has this like social mission, I think, right? So maybe this is a big part of where your social mission lives. Or procurement, you can just think about it in a totally different way, which is that you just don't you want to own as little green coffee as you can at any given time, because every pallet of green coffee you have in your warehouse represents thousands and thousands of dollars of working capital that is no longer available to you to invest elsewhere in your facility or in sales or other places where it make you money. And instead, it's just sitting there in green coffee, right? So maybe you're going to manage it that way. Processing, right? Some people roast, and for them, they are famous as roasters. And so roasting is everything. And it all needs to be very artisanal and celebrated, right? Some people look at it and they're just like, this is an industrial process. I'm thinking about this just in terms of how can I take that $4 a pound landed, it's just a made up price, of course, green coffee, and turn it into a $20 a pound, also totally made up, of course, um, pound, I guess 0.85 pounds of roasted coffee that I can then sell, right? Or processing can actually be another place where your social mission lives, because coffee roasteries, especially as you grow, can be great sources of employment. And they can be places where people go and find economic stability and find economic mobility, in fact, as they climb up through the ranks and get promoted as you grow, right? Lastly, outbound logistics. Again, if you're a Stratocaster, right, you want it to deliver fresh daily. So this is going to be something you think about all the time. Delivery fleets are very hard to run. Good drivers are very hard to hire. However, if you're somebody that does e-commerce, you're going to be thinking a lot about UPS or USPS. At some point in time, you're probably going to think about the Postal Service. They're pretty efficient, right? But you're going to have to negotiate prices, and you want to look at a shipping aggregator and all that stuff, right? And that becomes a big part of your operations there. That's their focus. Or you've decided that this is going to be like some random branding element. Like I think people who deliver coffee by drones are probably going to somehow make hay out of that fact, right? And so, and I think, or to put a slightly less, I mean, I actually think that's true, but like a less flip example is that we're just seeing the dawn of carbon neutral ocean freight through ammonia or methyl alcohol as the fuel. So if somebody is having their coffee brought here in a way that has a lower carbon footprint, maybe they do want to talk about that, right? That's actually inbound logistics, but anyway. Okay, so how does it all work, right? How am I doing on time? Oh, I'm just over time, aren't I, Miranda? I'll
Not
make
a
it quick.
problem. Yeah, not a
Okay,
problem. We don't have any questions
okay,
yet in the chat. We have a couple questions, but yeah, go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, so let's go back to Stratocaster Coffee. What should Mr. or Ms. probably Stratocaster Coffee do? They want it. So here we kind of like isolated here. Here are things that they should be thinking about. They want to have this comforting medium dark roast profile. It's very important, right? They want to have really high-end naturally processed coffees. That's something where they are very like they put quality and cost there, right? And then it's delivered fresh daily, right? So they want to get a good green buyer that can get that coffee for them, right? And so somebody that is like a green coffee buyer in the very classic mold, like somebody who has very strong sensorial analysis capabilities, right? And is really going to be able to see like this is going to be the coffee that powers that fruit bomb that everybody's going to be talking about um, at the Journey cover show. So you want to have really good production workers. It's something you need to invest in because you've decided to do this daily, delivered fresh daily thing, right? Which means that you're going to have a team that can take the orders, roast them, pack them, and get them ready to ship all within one day, right? So you need talent, right? And you need to support them and keep them cohesive and have like uh, workers who are supported often support you back, right? And really think a lot about that, right? You're going to need drivers as well who are willing to brave the roads. You're going to actually spend a lot of money on vehicles too, I would guess, right? So, but it's not all bad. There's some things that you don't need to worry about at all, right? I would propose to this person that maybe they package it as cheaply as possible, right? They do not need nitrogen flushing. They do not need a oxygen barrier bag, right? They could be putting it in like a waxed bag. I guess maybe wax is not good for the coffee. They could be putting it in a paper bag almost, and it wouldn't matter, right? Um, they don't actually need, in the way that we've talked about them here, they may need the greatest green buyer in the world, but they don't actually need the best lead roaster in the world, right? They are kind of trying to hit the same roast profile every time and just let the green express itself. Because they don't do any, like, e-commerce is not a big deal for them. They probably have a Shopify store that gets 3 hits a month or something like that. UPS shipping rates or USPS or FedEx is just not important to them. They don't need to think about it at all. And they have this brand that's like already out in the world physically through their trucks and everything. So I don't think they need a cool looking facility either. It's not important for them. Okay. If we go to Developer, right? Green coffees with fair pricing, same partners every year, sells only online, fancy design, right? Well, they're going to need some really cool packaging, right? And that packaging is going to convey, it's going to be a great way for them to convey their values, right? They're going to need a green buyer who is excellent, I think, personal, and I would add here sort of like business skills, because they're going to be going and they're going to be trying to negotiate prices in a different way than conventionally done, right? So this would be a case where you would want a green buyer that could travel to Latin America and speak Spanish, perhaps, right? This is not going to be something like you need to have pretty you need to be quite involved with your farmers at this point. And because they're online, everything's e-commerce. They are going to focus a lot on rationalizing that cost. The cost of shipping is a huge component of any e-commerce coffee business, right? And it can get smaller if you worry at it and worry at it, worry at it. So it's going to be something that they need to invest money in doing. And then, of course, they need to save a lot of their money to pay farmers, right? When you decide to pay somebody a higher price, that means that that money needs to come from somewhere. So they need to be running a pretty lean operation in some other way so that they can spare that money and pass it further up the value chain to the farm. So how can they spare that money? I don't know that these people even need to be roasting their own coffee, right? I know that sounds radical to some people. How can they be a coffee roaster if they don't roast their own coffee? They are running this coffee company. They're making a rational choice, right? They're saying, here's how I want the coffee to be roasted, right? But they've chosen that they would prefer to spend their money on their social mission with the farmers than on millions of dollars of equipment and facilities that are depreciating over time, right? Um, yeah, exactly here. They need to cut costs on their shipping rates. As mentioned earlier, it's an investment, but it's also a cost savings. And so they just need to be ruthlessly stripping out anything they can. And again, I don't think they need a cool looking facility either. Okay. Something that the two have in common. All right. Think. What is this? At the end. Right. So figure out how your value prop applies to your operation. And this is me. And I think we're ready for questions, Miranda.
Arno, we have a fantastic question in the chat from Jordan Brown. Thanks, Jordan. Where do you feel that end users sees the most value or appeal from coffee roasters? Do the end users really care about where the green is coming from if a shop or coffee roaster is actually roasting their own coffee versus toll roasting? Just curious where the highest value is in the process. Really good question.
That's an excellent question. And I think that the answer is that it depends so much on the customer and the coffee company, right? When I look at the like landscape of coffee companies today, I think a lot about the success of companies like Chamberlain Coffee and Black Rifle, and to some extent Big Face too. Although I think that's a little bit different of a case actually, because he's such a Jimmy Butler is clearly such a coffee fanatic. Um, I don't know. There was like this great thing in Sprudge about an interview with Emma Chamberlain. She was like, "It's such a troublesome thing to run a coffee company. I can't be bothered," or something like that. And I'm like, how much does she really think about coffee? But the important thing to her customers is that the product is associated with her and her lifestyle and her brand, and that's carrying a lot of value to them, right? I don't actually want to say that like I think that's they're satisfied with what they're getting there, right? If you look at something like Black Rifle, no comment about their politics. I think I'll leave that alone. But they are a company that comes out with a cultural message and to some extent a political message first. They're not really talking about the intrinsic quality of their coffee in the not in the way that I have experienced them is when I go to Bass Pro Shop and buy fishing lures, which I do. So to answer your question, Jordan, it's like, who is your customer, right? There are still coffee shops out there that are making it work um, primarily on intrinsic coffee quality, right? But for a lot of other places, I would say like I see this happen all the time, where the roaster gets into roasting because they're really into coffee, right? And they may be somebody who's like a little bit more into high acid coffees or exotic processing techniques or some of the more interesting things in coffee, where coffee tastes more like fruit. Okay, just sort of put it really broadly or really floral. And so they get into coffee because that's what they love and that's what they want to do, right? And they buy these coffees and they roast them rather light, I would say, is stereotypically the case. And what they've created is a beautiful, beautiful product that their customers cannot recognize the value in, because the customers that they are marketing to, you know, maybe they're like on a main street in a little town or something like that. Those people want good coffee, but that's not what that means to them. They want coffee flavored coffee.
Yeah.
And I have definitely seen this happen. This is like ripped from the headlines, right? And so in that case, what the roaster thought mattered the most was the quality of the green and perhaps like the acid profile and the intrinsic qualities. And that's not finding a lot of resonance with the customer. And this is when we say this tired old saw about like we have to educate the customer. They are so uninterested in this process. Like they are not coming to class. They are all
Yeah.
tardy.
You have to want to know.
Yeah, I think that it's also just like we have to respect their desires. If
Totally.
this is a conversation. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to do exactly what they say, right? It's a conversation where you want it to be a bit back and forth.
Arno, we have a
Right? Does
couple
that?
more questions in the chat for you. Naaman, I think we're going to come back. I think you should email Arno specifically about how to develop operations from scratch in a new roasting company. That's a fantastic question, but we should have Arno take that offline with you. Cody, I'd really like to get to your question, which is, Arno, where do you see the future of green coffee buying headed?
Well, I think that that's a really big question.
It is. It's a big
um,
one for sure.
I think that people. I'm going to say something. I'm going to make an observation. This isn't going to answer the question because it's such a big question about what's going to happen with green
Sorry,
going
we'll pause.
forward.
He did clarify, or they did clarify, excuse me. Um, online platforms,
Oh, I think that
travel.
online. Yeah. I'm known
Sorry.
as a bit of a dissident on the question of travel. I think that you should travel, yes, but probably I've traveled much, much less than other of my peers because I think that the money that I spend on airfare, I'm always cognizant of the fact that maybe the farmer would prefer to have that in cash. So that's just something to have in mind. But I also have worked with teams that have really convinced me of the value of physical presence, right? So, but I could see perhaps less travel or travel. What I would love to see is travel that's more intentional. Is green coffee can be traded on online platforms? I think that the digitization of coffee will continue apace, but I think that um, uh, importers are, I find that importers are like really high functioning businesses and they all compete with each other really viciously for our benefit, right? So everybody who's tried to disrupt importers has found that to be really challenging. because importers are good at their jobs and they don't charge very much money for what they do, right? So I find that that's something that's going to be hard to change. But will those importers start using online platforms? Yes, I think many of them do already. I would say one other thing that is a change that is currently happening, that technology is in deployment right now, is tasting, things like profile print, where people are able to assess intrinsic quality using, for lack of a better word, robots. And that is really changing the game in terms of large scale green buying operations.
We have time for just one more question, and then we'll get to Gael. I'd love to connect you and Arno offline for yours. But Philip asks, being on the depulp kind of coffee operations, we don't have a space ourselves, but people still love being in touch with a roaster via their roastery or coffee shop, which we don't have. Do you reckon physical spaces are overrated?
Yeah, I think they are overrated, but that doesn't mean they're without value, right? Like I understand what your customers want, and sometimes it's unavoidable. You have to have a place for people to come and convene and talk to you, right? And it's also worth saying, like, well, I come out as kind of like a negative Nelly on the roastery thing. Roasteries are super fun. They're such fun places to work. And so fun is worth something in life too. But the problem that I have is that, these days, like to build out your roastery, you may be looking at a cool $1 million on the cheap side, right? That's if you're in a lower cost market and you're very thrifty and you know what to do. So how else could you spend that $1 million, right? Always be thinking about the opportunity cost of what you're going to do here. And by the way, your cafe could also cost you $1 million, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to pay more rent every single month. So one approach to this problem that I like and that I've seen a lot is that people design their cafes to be break even, right? Of course, it's nice to make money at your cafe, but actually the margins are very thin at retail. But if you have a cafe that consumes no money over the long run, right, and it just pumps out beautiful drinks and beautiful customer experiences to a bunch of people all day, right, and you get to make up your money on an e-commerce program on the backside, then that cafe is so successful. It's a beautiful cafe for your business, right?
Awesome. And it's a great way to showcase. Yeah. So I would love for all these great questions. Carrie has a great question. There's a lot of good questions. So we'll email those to Arno because there's some really good ones in terms of cash flow, ways to improve, that type of things. So I really wanted to thank Arno for the time. I know we made it super tight and short because we wanted all of you guys to have as much time for your day as possible. I wanted to call out really quickly that if you have any other interest in checking out the Coffee MBA website, you can check out how to use a P&L. You can check out how to price your coffee bags. That could address cash flow quite a bit. And then also how to make a business case to support your business decisions. And you can buy those as a bundle as well. And Miranda and I price them as low as possible to be able to make them available to as many people as possible. Please do fill out the survey for us because it will help us understand what you're looking for. And we want to keep bringing you great content. The hope is that we start to do this monthly going forward. And also there's a question in there if you'd like to have Arno back for a part 2, because this was fantastic. Arno did a great job. Please do add that to your survey results. Arno, thank you so much. You're such a delight and your insight is absolutely invaluable. Could not appreciate it more. And thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you for the chance.